Okay, so the last thing that I want to do is refactor the middleware. So what that means is basically right now in our campground route, we have check campground ownership and we have is logged in, and we're duplicating is logged in over here where we have is logged in for comments, and then again check comment ownership. So we're just going to refactor all of this, move those methods into a new file. So I'm actually going to make a directory in the top level of our app, make directory middleware, and then inside of there, touch middleware, and I'm just going to combine all the middleware into one file. So we could have campground middleware, and then we could have comment middleware, but I'm just going to make one file because we don't have that many. And I'm going to call it index.js, and I'll show you why, rather than calling it middleware.js. I'm calling it index inside the middleware directory. Now let's open that up. And then in here, all the middleware goes here. And then we also need to add in our module.exports equal to something. So we need some object. And I've shown you a few different ways of doing this. We're going to call a variable called middleware object. It doesn't exist yet. We'll just do obj. And that will contain all of the methods. So we'll define that up here. And we'll just make it an empty object to start. And then we'll add in some lines that look like this. Middleware object dot, and then we'll have check campground ownership equals a function, and then we'll have middleware object dot check comment ownership equals a function as well, and so on. So we're adding all of these functions onto middleware object, and then we're setting module.exports to be middleware object. The other way that I've shown this to you is just like this, where inside of here we just add in check campground ownership as a function, which is also fine, but I just want to show you another syntax. Rather than defining all of the functions at once when we define the object, we can do it after the fact. And then the other way that you'll see it occasionally is just like this, where there is no variable, whoops, and you just have an object right here. And then all of your data goes in there. So all of those will work. We'll do middleware object, define that as an object, and then we'll add in our code. So we'll start middleware object dot check campground ownership equals the giant function, and we'll go ahead and copy that from campground EJS or campground JS. Just copy this whole thing over. We'll cut it out, and we will have to make a change or two because we don't need to define that name again, but we do need those arguments. I think we have one too many curly braces as well. Let's outdent this a little. There we go. Looks good. We'll do the exact same thing. This time check comments. And let's go copy that right here. We'll cut it out as well. Paste that in. And we want function, request response, and next. Outdent this as well. Other way. Great. And then we have our last one, which is logged in. So I'll cut that out of here. And I'll cut it out of here as well. It's identical. Okay, now let's go to our middleware and just add that in at the bottom. Middleware object dot is logged in equals function request response and next. Same code, we just moved it to this new file, and we added everything into an object, middleware object, that we're then module.exporting at the end. Great. Now we need to require this file, index.js, inside of the middleware directory. So let's start with campground. And up top, we'll just require middleware. And to do that, we need to first figure out, based off of where we are, which is inside of routes, campground.js, how do we get to index.js inside of middleware? Well, we need to back out one directory up into v10, and then we need to go into middleware. So we need a var, we'll call it middleware, equals require, and it's a .. So that gets us into v10 slash middleware. And we could do this index.js. But the reason that I wanted to show you, I want us to name it index.js, is that there's actually a special name that if we require a directory, but not a file, if I just require middleware, it will automatically require the contents of index.js. That's supposed to be like the home or the main file where other things are required. So actually, if we take a look in the node modules directory, where are you? Inside of, there we go. Let's take a look at Express. You can see there's an index.js file. And index.js is the one file that is actually required when we require the Express directory. And it requires a bunch of other files in turn, and those files might require a bunch of others. But that's really important. Index.js is a special name. So we don't have to do /index.js, we just leave it as .. /middleware. Now we need to use middleware because none of these functions are defined. Is logged in, check campground ownership, those don't exist. They're all inside of the middleware object now. Just like that. Middleware.isLoggedIn. We need the same thing for isLoggedIn here, and here, and here. And finally, there. We'll save, and we need to do the same thing in our comments file. There we go. And we just want middleware.isLoggedIn. Middleware.isLoggedIn. Same thing for check comment ownership, and one more, check comment ownership. So what we've done is two things. One, we've really cleaned up the routes files a little bit. They don't have those extra middleware at the bottom, which were pretty long actually, if you take a look. But we also are no longer writing this code twice. IsLoggedIn and any other future middleware we may need that we're going to share in different files, we don't have to duplicate. We just add them to this file. All right, let's make sure it works as the final test. No problems here, which is good. And everything looks okay, but we actually have a problem. If I click delete, this illustrates it. It tells me campground is not defined inside of middleware/index.js, line 6, middleware object.check campground ownership. If we take a look inside of our middleware file, check campground ownership, tells me campground wasn't defined on line 6. What I need to do is require campground. So var campground, based off of where we are inside of the middleware directory, technically of v10, I need to do require .. /models/campground. And then I'll duplicate it and do the same thing for comments. Require .. /models/comments. Save. Once again, restart. Go back. Refresh. Log in again. Sirius Black. Now if I try and delete this, everything works fine. And dang it, now I'm down another campground. Oh, the things I do for this class. Okay, so just to double check, edit still works as well. There we go. So what was happening is that we didn't require the correct dependencies, and we didn't know that until we actually tried to run the code. Once we required campground and comment, everything is good to go. All right, so all we really did there was move some code out into a separate file and require that file. But it cleaned up our routes a little bit, and it's also nice because now if we have other middleware that we need to add in, we have a little structure set up, a place to put them, and it's very easy to require them all over the place. Awesome. So that wraps up full CRUD for campground and comments. You can now create, read, update, and delete campgrounds, and you can create, read, update, and delete comments as well. And there's permissions in there. So there's authorization and authentication. So you can't create something if you're not logged in. You can't edit something or delete something if you're not logged in and if it doesn't belong to you. But you can read a comment or you can read a campground if you're logged in or not. It doesn't matter. Same thing for comments. So we have 3 kind of levels of permissions. One is you can read something if you're not logged in. 2 is you can create something if you are logged in, doesn't matter who you are though. And 3, you can edit and update something, but it does depend who you are. Next up, we're going to add in some other fun features, and the one that hopefully is the most exciting, or that will at least make the app more usable, is something called flash messages. So it's a way to see an error message that pops up that says, successfully created this, or you don't have permission to do that, or please sign in, or password incorrect. So it makes things a lot more usable. So we'll see that soon.